So welcome to today's Buy Sell Chat webcast. I'm a founder at JT Capital, a boutique private equity firm with a strategic focus on acquiring and managing multifamily apartments. Our expertise lies in optimizing operational efficiencies and value add opportunities. We are committed to fostering sustainable growth and maximizing investor returns through meticulous asset management, which is our topic of discussion today. We'll dive into understanding how to navigate today's headwinds in this sector. I wanted to give a warm welcome to Brittney, who is here alongside with Packer, who's the Director of Operations at JT Capital. Brittney is the Regional Vice President at RPM and has 14 years of experience in the multifamily property management industry. Previously, Brittney served as a regional manager and has worked in the Virginia, Washington, Arkansas, and Texas markets. She's proven success on a wide range of assets, and some of her strengths include capital improvements, financial analysis, and budgeting. Throughout her tenure, Brittney has received numerous achievements, to include a nomination of the 2022 Austin Property Supervisor of the Year and 2018 Property Manager of the Year finalist. So welcome, Brittney. We are excited to have you here.
Thanks, Pooja. I'm excited to be here.
Packer will kick it off, and we'll just have this kind of as a conversation. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions around like the markets, just operations, and then asset management in general.
Perfect.
Yeah. So again, appreciate you for being here with us, Brittney. So just to start off, we'd like to talk a little bit about operations and how they've looked in 2023 and what we envision them looking like throughout 2024. So I guess if you could just start off speaking a little bit to the overall market from an operations perspective in 2023 and what you've seen.
So I will say it's been kind of a crazy market this year. I feel like actually it's been like this since COVID. It's been 3 years of kind of just unpredictableness. The market has gotten better a little bit, at least with occupancy. I do feel like we have a lot of demand in the market. It's just the rents we're not being able to get as much. I feel like you're having to choose if you want the occupancy or the rents right now. And I feel like in 2024, we are going to see a little bit of a return with higher rents. I know in the Austin market in 2023, most the markets were seeing a 1% to 2% loss with rent if they were getting occupancy.
Yeah, no, that's definitely would be consistent with what we've seen as well, where previously throughout 2021 and 2022, we may have prioritized, rent growth and being aggressive on renewal rates and what we would offer to residents. But then throughout 2023, especially towards the back half, we have seen how we need to prioritize retention over new leases at the moment. And so definitely it's been a change in philosophy for a lot of different operators out there. Inside your portfolio, has that been fairly consistent across the board?
It really has. We focus on a lot of retention. We've been able to get more renewal increases than we have new move-ins. So like I said, we've really focused on resident retention. You're not having to turn units. You're still getting an increase. And we're cutting market rents and effective rents for new leases. We're still seeing I would say a 3 to 5% renewal increase. So definitely retention is where we've gone, especially in Q3, Q4 of 2023.
For sure. And what do you think are the driving factors that have led to that shift in the market?
I mean, I feel like right now a lot of people can't afford to move, so they're willing to make it work with wherever they're at. But I do feel like we have so many new builds happening all throughout Austin, and they're higher price. So if you have a classic style apartment complex, you actually have a leg up. You can look out for the prices conscious renter versus trying to get top dollar rents.
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely something that we've noticed as well, and that we continue to track is we've seen a lot of delayed deliveries of new construction that were delayed from COVID throughout 2021 and 2022. And we've seen a real effect of absorption throughout 2023. And I anticipate that we'll see that into 2024 as well. So I do like how you mentioned, though, that there is the ability with classic products to be able to pander to a wider variety of prospective tenants and that price point, where typically newer construction have to be at a higher price point than a lot of the existing product.
A lot of clients hold off on renovations in 2023 just because we've had the leg up on having classic units when new builds don't have those.
For sure. Well, that makes sense. Outside of retention and occupancy, what have been some of the other biggest challenges you've seen throughout 2023?
Honestly, resident retention has been a challenge for us. While people aren't being able to move because of price and interest rates in homes, being able to keep residents happy has been harder for us this year. Competing with not only the new builds, but competing with their resident events, their move-in specials for an older asset has been hard. And these new builds and mid-rises are doing anything possible to get new renters. So they're doing drawings of a year free rent. They're doing boat tours during the summer. So having to compete with that on an older product has been difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Which makes sense. We've seen new assets with creative amenities such as like free beer from a flowing tap inside the clubhouse 24/7, beautiful gyms, beautiful pools, right? And so it does pose a factor to be able to compete with them and what they're able to offer, especially like you mentioned, where they have very unique structures. Let's say I hadn't heard that before, a drawing for free rent for a year. That's quite the concession that someone's offering there.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry about that.
I was just saying it's insane the stuff that they're doing.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So what have been different ways or methods that you've sought to like overcome that throughout 2023 to keep residents happy and combat the new product that's come online?
I definitely feel like having the sense of community is where it starts. Getting your residents together so they can know their neighbors, know the office staff, any type of resident events where they can meet their neighbor and feel safe in their community has really helped us. I feel like a lot of the new product tries to throw bright and shiny things out there, so where we can make it feel more like a sense of community or sense of home. That's really what's worked for us on all of our resident events.
Awesome. No, that's really good to hear. And I would say that we share very similar sentiments with that we want residents to feel empowered in their home and where they live and where they go to sleep each night, right? So that's great. So leading a little bit into that and challenges and ways we've overcome that in 2023, let's say looking at that occupancy struggle that a lot of people have experienced throughout 2023, what are first levers that you look at when you're looking to improve that or help? I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this. Sorry, apologies with this, but thinking of those challenges with where NOI sits today, what are the first levers that you would want to pull on your assets to help see improvement throughout 2024?
I think definitely occupancy is number one. There's a lot of different ways to be able to improve occupancy. I think you've had to think outside of the box in 2023 and kind of be creative and be number one to do things versus following the market. A big one that we've done is just local partnerships. So partnering with businesses for free advertising. They can come to our resident events and in return we'll post flyers on the doors. We've even been able to put our names on silverware wrappers. I mean, just being able to get creative in any way that nobody else is doing. I feel like if you leave the market with your marketing, you see more return versus if you're following what everybody else is doing. So that's really worked for us. Also just engaging content, social media, super active on that, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I feel like the more active you are, the more marketing you're putting out, the more you're going to get in. And then targeted advertising, we've had really, really good success with geofencing and Google ads this year. That's really helped push us.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen that same thing and experienced success through geofencing and some of that targeted advertising that you mentioned. So different ways, speaking of operations, as we look to 2024 and attempt to improve NOI at all assets right across the board, what are some different ways that you initially think of when it comes to increasing income?
So increasing income, there's a couple of different things. Value add services, of course, are number one. Carports, garages, are you charging for pest control? Do you have valet trash? And with that, are you charging what everybody else in the market is? It changes so often that market surveys are so important to do. I know at a couple of my assets, we've only been charging $3 for pest control. We called around, everybody's charging $5. That's an easy way for other income. Another way is pet fees. RPM here recently has gone away from doing pet deposits. Typically, most people do a $200 deposit and then a $200 fee. Instead of doing that, we're just doing a $400 fee. It's automatic income in your pocket. You don't have to return it to the resident. And then another one that we've seen super good success on in 2023 is technology upgrades. So a couple of the assets that I oversee, we did smart homes, so smart locks, smart appliances, lights, and then alarms, and then we're able to charge a technology package on top of that. And especially on older assets, it puts you a leg up with the new builds, and then it's an extra income flow.
Awesome. Those are definitely some creative ways. And with RPM on some of our other assets, we've started to implement a few of those. One creative solution we discussed on a property call today was in regards to a pet screening, kind of along those lines of pet rent, where that helps just vet, right, the legitimate emotional service animals, ESAs, at the property, and helps find all the pets that may be living there without paying their dues. Right. Yeah. So those are,
in 2020, and once COVID hit, the emotional support animal, like almost all of my assets, the income for pets just plummeted. And you're like, what is happening? And then you evaluate, you look at these notes, and you're like, you paid $20 online for that. That's not legit. So definitely, that's another good way.
Got it. No, absolutely. And yeah, we've seen that as well. And so that's a creative way that we've seen through the pet screening, or increasing the original fee when someone new move-in comes to the property with pets. I like that creative thinking. I did get one comment. Are you able to adjust your microphone? It sounds like the feedback's a little bit muffed from what's coming through.
Is that any better?
That's better for me. We'll see. Well, I'll see if I get another message about it here in a few minutes. But that sounds good. Awesome. Yeah. So I love those ways that you mentioned of creative ways that we can increase income. And obviously that will have a positive effect on overall NOI. What are some ways that you have used or seen on your assets to decrease expenses?
During budget season, it's always the really great time to negotiate contracts, get bids on all your contracted services, whether it's landscaping, pest control. Everybody knows during budget time, if they want business, they'll work with you on budget. So always negotiating contracts, implementing regular maintenance, preventative maintenance, doing filter changes, smoke detectors, doing that quarterly and throughout the year versus waiting for a resident to call or an AC go down. Always helps decrease expenses. Another one would be water conservation. I've seen a lot of properties move towards this in the last couple of years. Slow flow toilets, changing out shower heads, and then I also know City of Austin does a grant where if you they'll install those and then give you money back to help save water. So that helps a lot of assets as well.
Awesome. Those are all good solutions and ones that we've implemented at our property. I like how you mentioned that as we are currently in budget season and finalizing budgets for 2024 is really essential to always work with those vendors and make sure you're being charged a fair price for the services that are rendered. So one thing that I'd highlight for you is we've seen that on one of our assets in Austin as we've through takeover with RPM and as they've become the management company there, we have seen the service contracts improve. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's an easy one to do once a year for sure, if not more.
Awesome. Well, that's good. All right. With that, I'm going to pass it off to Pooja to jump into our next section of a couple more operational challenges.
Perfect. Thank you, Packer. And then Brittney, maybe you could go a little bit closer to the mic. I think it's still a little muffled is what we've heard.
Okay. Let me know if that gets better.
Okay. I think so. Awesome. So you touched a little bit on occupancy, right? And the very creative ways that we're doing this in 2023, but maybe just taking a step back, just what are the normal things that you would do from a property management standpoint to increase occupancy? So just the typical things from advertising, word of mouth, resident referrals, things like that, just like the table stakes that we do on a day-to-day basis. And then obviously this year it's been very creative.
Right. Yeah, referral programs are huge. Resident referrals, and you can always spice it up during the holidays, cash for Christmas, kind of increase it. Or we've seen success on doing a tiered system. So residents get, if they refer one person, it's 250. The next person they refer is 500. Almost becomes like a game to the residents, and they find a lot of fun in doing that. So we've had luck in that. What else? Unique selling points. If you have anything unique to the property that your comps don't have, definitely highlighting that online to showcase that versus what your comps have. And then loyalty programs. We've seen a lot of success in this from a retention side. So I've done like a renewal menu before when you send out your renewal letters. And residents that have been there for a year can choose a carpet cleaning or a one-time maid service. If they're there for 2 years, we'll give them upgraded light fixtures. And then every year that they're there, they get something in addition. Like I said, resident retention is super important right now. So we've seen a lot of success with that.
Yeah, we've actually also done this on some of our assets. Have you done this? And I've also read an article on that with renewals and the amount of concessions we're seeing in the market, even with the renewals, you're often having to concede, which is not the norm, but we're having to do that. Otherwise, they're saying, well, why not go somewhere else and, get $2,000 off?
Yeah, we've definitely seen that a lot, especially because, like I said, we've cut a lot of net effective rents. So when you're sending out renewal increase and they're going online shopping around, they're seeing their own apartment cheaper than what we're sending the renewal increase. You definitely have to be creative. We always tell our residents, like, we have an open door policy, come in, we're happy to talk about it, but we have definitely had to negotiate a lot more this year than we've ever seen in the past.
Yep. No, it's, I feel like every week is, it changes. And we can all attest to that, having to do that at our property together. So I think one of the biggest things that we're also seeing is just the amount of supply that has come across, right? All that pent up supply. And now we're just seeing it everywhere. And I know you had mentioned this on one of our calls. What was the amount of supply that you typically see in the Austin market? And then what was it for this year?
Oh, I couldn't tell you number wise, but I do know that it almost tripled than what we normally see. It was insane. Like Packer was saying, there was such a delay from COVID, and then winter storm hit us even harder. It's been a delay after delay, and then this year it's like the floodgates open, and it almost tripled.
Yeah, it's like you had COVID, you had to deal with that challenge. Now it's a new way of like, okay, we have all this supply and we really need to retain residents. Kind of on that note, how has that been a challenge for value add strategies where you're renovating? So you might have to send a non-renewal and probably not the most optimal in this market. How do you navigate that?
It has been a challenge, and that's kind of what I was saying earlier. I've almost recommended not, if we've renovated so many, I've been recommending to hold off, because being able to have the advantage to have a better price point versus a renovated price point, a lot of clients right now are not seeing their return on renovations, so it's been hard. We've definitely scaled back at a couple of my assets. We were doing 8 to 10 a month, where in 2023 we did 2 or 4 a month. We kind of did them as renters wanted them. So if a renter came in and they saw a renovated that was already leased and they would only rent if we had that, we would turn a unit for them really quick. Otherwise, we've really stayed with classic product in 2023 to remain competitive.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think there's been a lot of stories when you're in the business long enough. Can you share with us, like, just what's the most craziest thing that's happened to you? I think, between Packer and I, we could probably sit here for hours. I'm sure. Yeah.
A lot. I mean, even with you guys on our weekly calls, we laugh about the crazy stuff that happens all the time. But I think one that will always stick out to me, it was actually when I was a property manager, and I was a property manager in Austin. I was going home for the day. It was 5:30. Got to the red light right outside of my property, and I hear all these sirens and cop cars, and I'm like, what is happening? So I look over, and there's a car completely turned over on its side at a gas station, and I was like, oh, car accident. That's where they're going. Didn't think anything about it. Light turns green, and as soon as light turns green, I see all the cops flooding into my property. I'm like, great. So I make a U-turn, drive into the property, and I see them arresting a guy right on the edge of the property. So I'm like, he wrecked his car, he ran, just happened to go on the property, not a big deal. So I park, reverse out, go home. Well, as I'm driving home, I'm merging onto like one of the major toll roads in Austin, and look behind me, and there's like 5 or 6 cops, and I'm like, okay, that's weird. I keep going a little bit, 2 miles up the road. There's like 8 cops behind me, lights on, sirens going. So I go to pull over, and they're on their megaphone yelling, "Get out of the car with your hands up." And I was like, what's happening? So get out of my car, I'm crying. I'm like, I didn't do anything. What's happening? And they made me walk back to the sound of their voice. They put me in handcuffs, put me on the ground. And I finally was like, I have no idea what's happening. And apparently it was a drive-by shooting. And the guy, one of the guys had ran, the other one hadn't got caught yet. And my property backed up to a dealership, a car dealership. And there were a bunch of mechanics out there. And they told the cops that I was the getaway car for the second shooter.
Oh my God.
And they were like, can we search your car? And I was like, please. They searched my car, finally got me out of handcuffs, and I explained, I was like, I'm just the manager there. I was going to check on my property. I was just doing my job. And they're like, we were doing our job. Following a tip. And I was just like, are you kidding me? And they ended up giving me like a crisis card, and they're like, if you need therapy or anything, we'll give it to you for free. But I think that was probably one of the craziest stories ever. And then I had to go back to work after that because they ended up throwing the gun in one of our dumpsters.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I think that was the craziest thing. But crazy stuff does happen every day.
Yeah, that might top our stories. But that is intense. People say, what's the day-to-day like in property management? And my answer is always like, I don't know, because it just changes every day. From pricing could be good like one week, the next week, the whole market's changed. That literally just happened to Packer and I yesterday. Things are just continuously changing. We've had fun stories with just residents, and you learn more about them, and then you have your fan favorites. So
yeah, exactly.
I'll leave it at that. Yeah. So kind of one of my last questions, or one of my second to last questions, is delinquency, I think, is really important to everybody, right? That is a big part of how your top line ends up decreasing if you have a high delinquency balance. So can you share kind of what typical policies look like? How would you attack really high delinquency? And then if you can, also share what you can about squatters and delinquency rights, because I think that that's really interesting, not just in Austin, but I think, across the country.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do have experience with squatters. So the delinquency has changed as a whole since COVID. It's a whole new ballgame. Used to, somebody didn't pay rent in 3 days, you could serve them. In 3 days, we could file on them. We'd have a court date in a week. And at most, it would take 20 to 30 days to evict someone. Ever since COVID, times have changed. We still have the CARES Act that's in effect. So if you're a CARES Act property, federally backed, you have to send a 30-day notice to vacate before you can even file at the courts. I know for City of Austin and Williamson County especially, the courts have been so backed up. So even after you're able to file after 30 days, you're not getting a court date sometimes for another 30 days. So by the time you're going to court and getting possession, you're residents have a 90-day balance. So it has been a struggle. We've had to get creative. I've implemented Walk Wednesday on all my properties. So every single Wednesday, they're knocking on doors, making residents uncomfortable. If they're not answering, we're walking in, asking where payment is. We're calling. I think the biggest thing right now is just being consistent. Residents see when you're sending out notices, when you're calling, when you're knocking on doors. And the 1 month that you don't do that, you won't get payments. So being consistent is so important. And then squatters. Oh, so it's crazy in Austin right now. From people living with a roommate not being on the lease and then not moving out. We've seen homeless go into apartments and get squatters' rights. So I know here in Austin, squatters do have rights. If they have a toothbrush in that apartment, they have rights to the apartment. You have to legally go through an eviction process, which takes twice as long if you don't have a lease. Sometimes you don't even have the squatter's name. So where a 90-day eviction now turns into a 6-month eviction. I mean, I think one of the sites where he has a $18,000 balance that he's collected when we haven't been able to do anything. One of them, the squatter that I have right now, we have filed the court date. We have gone to court. He had rights to appeal the court hearing. So now we are going to county court. And it takes almost 60 days to get a county court date right now. So it's been crazy. Make sure doors are locked so you do not have squatters.
Yeah, it's quite a ride, right? And I think that just in general, it sounds really easy when you go through the process of filing for eviction, but it's not always just black and white. As we've just seen through, if you're a CARES Act, it takes a little bit longer. And so it just really depends on also where you're at. I know Austin
have really found out their rights. Like you could just evict and residents really didn't know. They didn't pay, so they were getting out. But now the amount of appeals that I've seen in 2023, I mean, they have to pay like $1 into the appeals bank account, and then we have to wait another 30 days.
Exactly. So it's not super clear cut. I know Texas, you were allowed to evict, but then we're in Austin, you weren't allowed to evict, even though the rest of the state was until certain. So it also just varies from county to county.
Yep.
My last question for you is, can you tell us about probably one of the toughest properties you've had, and what were the key things that you were able to do to just turn that property around?
I think number one is building a team. You have to have the team to achieve any of it. So building a solid team that has the same vision as the client and the management company is huge. After that, like I said, consistency is the biggest thing, and really just ripping the Band-Aid off. A lot of times you want to go in and you want to take 30 to 60 days to figure out where we're at, what we need to do, and come up with a game plan. But I've seen it. You go in, you rip the Band-Aid off, you start evicting, you raise rents if you can, you knock out your renewals, and with being consistent, you really start to see some results. The property, I have some stats. We took over a property in May, and delinquency was at $350,000, $168,000 of that was 90+ days past due. We went in day one, started sending notices, started walking units, and now 6 months later, delinquency is at $81,000. So we were able to cut delinquency by 76% in just 6 months.
It's amazing.
And all while keeping occupancy between, I don't think we've ever dipped below 88, 89. We've usually tiered around 90, 92, and we've evicted and forced out 60 residents in 6 months. So being consistent and just ripping the Band-Aid off, it's almost like changing an entire demographic. But once you start seeing the results and you see people paying, I mean, we haven't been able to get the rents that we wanted maybe, or that we were previously getting, but we're getting people that are paying. So I think we've written off almost $427,000 in bad debt. Our rents are down maybe for new movements, maybe by 6%. But we're getting people that are paying, and our renewals are making up for it. So it's been an ever changing thing. You have to change strategy almost weekly, if not daily, but to be on your toes and be consistent with a plan, I think is the biggest thing.
Yep, absolutely. No, that's phenomenal. I will hand it over to Packer. He has just a few remaining questions for us.
Perfect.
As you were discussing that and kind of the fluidity of what you see day to day and the consistent effort that it takes, when you take over an asset and when you actively manage an asset, how do you typically analyze and view pricing?
So biggest thing is market survey right now. Comps are kind of like with your marketing, you have to be the first to make a move. So if you're going to do the special, you need to do it before your comps are doing it. So market surveys are number one, and to do them at least weekly. We review pricing and market surveys weekly within my portfolio. That would be number one for me. Number two is looking at a sub-market report to see, just because your sub-market and your market areas doing 2% rent increases doesn't mean they're getting the leases or it's viable for Austin. So when you pull a CoStar report and look at the actual market and you can see that rents are going down, maybe you jump on it first, decrease your rents, throw in a move-in special, and we've been super successful with getting 14 to 20 applications a week when we do that. So I think it's just really comparing to your market.
Got it. No, I think that makes a lot of sense to always be really forward looking. So within your submarket, you can always strive to be proactive rather than reactive in regards to pricing changes. Because Pooja and I have seen this recently where one person makes a strategic price move and 1 or 2 weeks later, everyone's followed suit, right? So we kind of view it just a basic economics, right? From the supply and demand, when there's a shift in price, the shift in demand will come as follows. So that makes a lot of sense. Touching base a little bit then on CapEx items. I know Pooja had mentioned kind of in your bio and highlights that you have a lot of experience with that. Tell us typically your process in going about capital expenditures and how many bids you collect for each project.
So we usually always try to collect 3 bids. Depending on those 3 bids, if they're crazy different, we'll collect 4 or 5. I think it's very important to have a construction and facilities maintenance team. They've helped us tremendously with RPM. I can collect my 3 bids, send them to my facilities manager before the client ever gets their hands on them, just to make sure everything is apples to apples. They're seeing the same thing I am. Nothing price gouging wise. So always collect 3 bids, and then depending on that, if we need to get 4 or 5, we've definitely done that in the past.
Awesome. Yeah. And sometimes it's amazing to see when you do collect 3 bids or 4 or 5, just the wide array of pricing that's available out there and the different scopes and how different subcontractors and interpret, I guess, the work that needs to be done. So we've seen a lot of positive results with Brittney on that, of collecting multiple bids, utilizing her relationships and to our benefit and to the asset's benefit as well.
It's also super important that not just to go to always a GC or a general contractor. I know we've had experience where they bid out something, but then if you go straight to the source, you're getting it $20,000 to $30,000 cheaper. So we've definitely seen success in that too.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. With that, I know we've talked a lot about retention and renewal rates today and how that's kind of a focus of 2023 and also leading into 2024. What would you say are your go-to resident retention events at each property?
So anything with food and drinks is always the most popular. Holidays, doing a Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas dinner, thinking outside of the box again. I have one manager who just blows it out of the water when it comes to resident events. Right now, she's doing a scavenger hunt every Friday. She's had residents fall in love with it. So they scavenger hunt for little ducks, and then there's prizes on the bottoms of each of them. They come into the office. And that also gives us time to talk to the resident. We have an iPad readily available, giving it to them, asking for a 5-star review. So not only is it helping us keep residents, we're getting reviews to help get new residents. for Christmas, a couple of my properties are doing wrapping stations. We have wrapping paper, tape, scissors, where they can just come in. We have a station set up. They can wrap their gifts for free. Don't have to buy any supplies and then go home. So I think anything that's resident engaging or helps them save or achieve convenience are the best resident events.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would agree there. I think with resident events too, it's essential that they're just held on a consistent basis. So you have multiple touch points and can communicate through those events to the residents that you do care about them. And it's not necessarily just like a one-time annual thing. One creative thing we've discussed, like at our properties with Christmas coming up, is just providing like one roll-off dumpster for a couple days directly after Christmas. That's a couple $100, and residents can throw their boxes, wrapping paper, and other stuff like that in them. And it's a good way just to signal that, hey, we recognize that you guys live here, it's your home, and that we do value your presence here, right? So,
absolutely. Yep, that's huge.
Yeah, and food definitely is key. That seems to be always a good driver.
Yeah.
So, with that, like from an asset management standpoint, what KPIs do you track on a regular basis, and which ones are most important?
So outside of the typical income, expenses, and NOI, RPM tracks 5 additional ones. So we track net effective rent, just meaning that our average net effective rent is higher than our entire comp set. We track work orders, so we like for 50% of the work orders to be completed within 24 hours, another resident retention item. We also do rent collections. We like to collect 96% of rent by the 4th. What's our other two? Occupancy, of course, beating budgeted occupancy, and then reputation. We like to be 4 stars or higher at all times. And another thing RPN does that I really like is we all bonus off KPIs. So all the way down from the groundskeeper, leasing agent, all the way up to senior vice president. So we all bonus off the same thing. It's a really good way to get together with your teams and the maintenance guys. I think a lot of times the maintenance guys get forgot about, and they don't realize how important they are to help us with financials, to help us with the work orders, to help us with retention.
Yeah, absolutely. I love those. I love that one that you mentioned of the 24 to 48 hours with work orders to take care of those. Obviously, the actuality or reality of that is going to depend on what the work order entails, but that's the most important way that you can signal the residents that, one, you hear them, and then 2, you're there to take care of issues that may present themselves. So that's awesome. I also love that how you mentioned that the bonus is all structured the same from the bottom to the top. That way you do have a unified vision as a team to be able to achieve the goal at each asset. So that's great. With that, one question that we may have glossed over earlier, kind of talking about a team and an on-site team. I was curious from your perspective. You had mentioned that turning around an asset, improving an asset's performance, all starts with the team that's there on the ground. What are your go-tos for keeping a team engaged and motivated?
I think just empowering your team, letting your managers drive the bus and make the recommendations and just helping guide them is huge. Also, I think clear conversation. So I sit down with my RMs, my managers. I let them know this is our week goal, this is our month goal. I let them give the recommendations. So just empowering them, I think, helps a lot. Of course, I always like to find what motivates my team. Is it money? Is it food? Is it a day off? So whatever motivates them, I keep in a little folder when we're in a pinch and we need to get occupancy up, we need to get delinquency collected. I'll pull up what motivates them, and I'll go to them specifically saying, if we can do A, B, and C, we'll get 8 hours of PTO for free, or we'll buy the team lunch. I think being very involved with the team and showing that we aren't in positions. We were all hired to do one job for a client, that's to make client money. So if that means that I'm picking up trash, if that means the leasing agent is fixing a toilet, or the maintenance guy's leasing an apartment, just whatever it takes, and showing them that versus just telling them every day, I think it's super important.
Awesome. No, those are all great ideas and strategies to be able to keep really one of the most essential aspects of the asset engaged and motivated and doing their job. With that, within RPM and within your portfolio, tell us a little bit about your experience of shared services, or how you utilize shared services within RPM.
So I think that's one of the best things about working for a bigger and developed management company is the amount of support that we have. Obviously, we're huge in Austin, so if we're ever short-staffed, people are always wanting to help, down to help. All you have to do is send an email and usually have a line of people ready to help. Also, just the support teams that we have within RPM. I've mentioned our regional facility maintenance team. They are over 20 to 30 properties each, and they visit every property at least quarterly, if not more. They were there to do quarterly inspections, preventative maintenance, top shop awards. So just being able to share the maintenance guys have that kind of support is really nice. We have a transitions team, a dispositions team. Just the support that RPM has is insane.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen that on our assets and have been able to benefit and experience that as well. I like how you mentioned from a maintenance perspective, because though that position might be viewed from the bottom up, right, they are very essential to an asset, its appearance, performance, perception to everyone that is in contact with that asset. So, well, outside of that, Pooja, do you have any additional questions you'd like to discuss with Brittney today?
No, I think we went through a whole host of questions.
Yeah, I would say that your craziest experience definitely caught me off guard. I was waiting for the climax, I guess you could say, and it was crazier than I expected. So
I get that a lot when I tell that story. My grandma's always like, "You should just write a book one day," and I was like, "I feel like anybody in property management could write the best book."
Oh,
absolutely, absolutely. Well, we'd like to thank Brittney for her time and knowledge that she shared with us today. A recording of the webcast will be sent out via email, and it will also be available on our website. Thank you.